An actual economist on this app gave a breakdown of America's debt, how it's measured, and how it's going to affect the economy. His name is Clarke. He's a friend of mine, and this is the post I'm talking about right here at the bottom left. He points out that our debt is quite high at $35 trillion, but he also points out that our GDP is huge as well. It's $29 trillion a year. It costs about $1 trillion to pay the interest on that debt every year. We should be observing how much is that cost as a percentage of our GDP. And right now it's at 2.37, so it's lower than it was in the 80s and 90s. So our economy was in much more trouble in the 80s and 90s when it comes to paying interest on our debt. But he did mention that we can skyrocket past those numbers in the 80s and 90s dependent on who we elect. Here's the sad truth. There's what presidents and the rest of the government want to do, and then there's what they can afford to do. Whatever they can't afford, they borrow and get us in a deficit. And a deficit just means how much money you spent versus how much you actually don't have. And 2020 was the year of our largest deficit ever. Deficits skyrocket when there's an economic recession or a huge crisis like COVID. This chart measures our deficit as a percentage of our GDP, and it is steadily going up. Under Kamala Harris's presidency, we are expected to get a $1.2 trillion deficit with more child tax care credits and raising the corporate tax back to 28%. Under a Trump presidency, with tax cuts across the board, especially for the rich, we are expected to have a $5.8 trillion deficit. This huge spike in 2020 wasn't just because COVID was ravaging our economy, it's because Trump gave extraordinary tax cuts to the top 1%. He cut it from 35 to 21, which means we had to borrow several hundred billions of dollars. You cannot give generous tax cuts and manage to maintain a government budget without severe borrowing. Either way, watch this economist's post, give him a follow, and if you're really worried about how expensive our debt is getting to service, then decide who you want in office. I am the Geo Hussar, and I know it hurts a lot of people's feelings, but it's always Democrats that reduce the deficit. Thanks for watching.